It's no mystery. I feel like Naughty Dog has wasted a lot of time this gen. Honestly, all of PlayStation has with all these live service projects that go nowhere. But Naughty Dog specifically feels really, really wasteful. It's really frustrating to see how little has been done. But it may actually be worse than we thought. Because we heard, of course, about The Last of Us Online. They worked on that from like 2019 before The Last of Us Part 2 launched. It kind of ballooned into its own standalone game when it was originally just going to be like a little mode for The Last of Us Part 2. And they worked on that until it was eventually canceled a handful of years later. After a lot of development work was done on it, they just walked away from it. And now we're getting news that they're not just working, or they haven't just been working on Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, which is, of course, their upcoming game that Neil Druckmann has said he's taken a lot of inspiration from games like Elden Ring on it, which is very interesting. He says he likes the idea of telling stories not just through dialogue, but also through the environment and player agency and things like that. So it's going to be very different, I think, than most of their games, but still. They've said that that's their primary focus right now, but they are working on other things. However, there's a rumor, and this is, a week and a half old at this point, but I still wanted to talk about it because there's a rumor, speculation, so take it with a grain of salt, that an unannounced Naughty Dog single-player game was canceled earlier this year. This is from Gaming Bolt. Following the cancellation of the Last of Us standalone multiplayer game, Naughty Dog's Neil Druckmann revealed that the studio had, quote, more than one ambitious new single-player game in development, which I remember hearing. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's The Last of Us Part 3. Might not have been. Of course, the studio revealed Intergalactic, the new sci-fi title, at the Game Awards 2024. Other single-player projects have seemingly been in the works, but according to insider Daniel RPK on Patreon, one was canceled recently. Helmed by Vineet Agarwal, I'm so sorry. Previously, the director of the online title, it was reportedly in development for more than a year and still in the early stages. He would subsequently leave Naughty Dog. Vineet Agarwal, I'm so sorry. I can't read. Hold on, 15 pop-ups because it's LinkedIn, because that's just how LinkedIn does it. You can see Santa Monica, California. Naughty Dog is listed as the current place of employment. Prior to that, though, there's been other things also going on. Another single-player title has allegedly been in development for around 3 years and is led by Sean Escaig of Marvel Avengers fame. Sean Escaig, this guy, you've probably seen him in some promotional videos and stuff. He worked on The Lost Legacy, Transformers Dark of the Moon. And if we go here, again, LinkedIn, you gotta love it. If we go down, been working pretty hard on this, liked by him, okay. Where's does he not have his job listings? I don't see that. Doesn't look like it. Probably smart that he doesn't put where he's working. But he has worked on Marvel Avengers, which we all kind of know how that went. Not great. But he worked on that, and then he worked at Naughty Dog for a little while. No further details are known, though it could be Uncharted Drake's Fortune remake that was rumored last year. And if you don't remember this, there was a rumor that they were remaking the first game in the Uncharted series, and they were doing it potentially in-house. There was rumors that they might be working with a partner, kind of like how BGS just recently did the Oblivion remake, remaster, whatever, where they had a partner, but they also worked on it a lot. So it wasn't clear what was happening or if they were doing the same thing here, but it was rumored that that was one of the projects in development. However, this has seemingly also been canceled. Okay. So, there's been multiple projects that Naughty Dog has worked on in the last generation that have just been worked on for a handful of years and then they get canned. And I don't know if this is because they're just looking at it and being like, it's not going to return a profit. Or maybe they just weren't working out too great. Or maybe they think Heretic Prophet is going to be so good that they need all hands on deck. We don't know. But again, it just kind of reaffirms the idea that they've wasted so much time and money and effort working on these things that never see the light of day. It's wild. And you compare it then to some of the other more prolific developers this generation, like Obsidian. Obsidian's been cranking out games recently. And, even the, not Haven, the guys, they did It Takes Two. Hazelight has even been pumping out more games where they released in 2021 the game of the year, It Takes Two, and then they just this year put out another game, Split Fiction, that was also phenomenally well received. So I just don't like it's crazy how you have these teams that are very big, very capable, but then they get into these ruts where they just don't do anything for a decade. Just nothing. And I don't know how that happens, but they certainly get rusty. And I don't know how it possibly could be so prevalent within PlayStation specifically, but man, it's really, really bizarre. So shout out to The Last of Us online project that died so these other games could live and then be killed later. Holla. Hooray. But hopefully they actually get Heretic Prophet out the door at a reasonable amount of time, and that is good. I guess we'll see. How many of the devs that worked on Uncharted and The Last of Us are even still there? Because the problem in recent years is that our games are being made by the team that created the originals that we love. A lot of them are still there. The difference at Naughty Dog is seemingly that they changed company culture a lot after The Last of Us Part 2, and they got rid of crunch. And crunch culture at Naughty Dog was kind of like water and being wet. It was just understood. If you are at Naughty Dog, you will crunch a lot. It's just how it is. And then they fixed that and they improved it, and the studio culture, and it's much healthier now, which is a good thing. But I think that's also caused their games to take way, way longer to make. And that also means that their process of iteration has slowed as well. It used to be that they could cram 60, 70 hours of work a week out of their employees. And that allowed them to get much further along much faster. And so they could cancel or iterate much faster. And they were also much more focused. But I think, as after the PS4 era, it was pretty clear PlayStation wanted more IP. They didn't want to just be doing sequels upon sequels upon sequels for the next decade or two. They wanted some fresh ideas and some fresh IP. So they greenlit some more like experimental projects, but those have also gone basically nowhere. And a lot of them have been canceled. So it's unfortunate, but it seems like there's multiple layers of problems within Sony's leadership right now for these projects. Yeah, Naughty Dog is good at retaining talent. Yeah, in general they are. There's been some people who have left because working at Sony or at Naughty Dog until recently was very draining. You'd work on Uncharted, crunching your ass off for years and years and years, and then you finally get the game out the door and it's just like, I need a break. I need to go do something else. And a lot of them did. A lot of them went off and did something else. Now that the company culture is way better, I think they've been able to retain a lot of talent and stuff, but still.